Chapter 23 Monster. It was the last day of September 1944. Louis, Frank, Tinker, and a few other Afuna veterans stood by the gate of Amore POW camp, which sat on a man made island in Tokyo Bay. The island was nothing more than a sandy spit, connected to shore by a long bridge. Across the water was Tokyo, still virtually untouched by the war. Before the prisoners stood a Japanese corporal. He was leering at them. He was a beautifully crafted man in his mid-20s. His face was handsome, his form trim. A sword angled off his hip, and circling his waist was a belt with an enormous metal buckle. The only incongruities on this striking corporal were his hands, brutish things that one man would liken to paws. As the prisoners stood at attention, the corporal stared. Minutes passed, then abruptly the corporal swept forward, walking with chin high, chest puffed. He looked the men over, Louis thought, as if he were God himself. Down the line the corporal strode, pausing before each man and barking, "Name!" When Louis gave his name, the corporal's eyes narrowed. Decades later, men who looked into those eyes would be unable to forget what they saw in them. A wrongness elicited a twist in the gut and sent a prickle up the back of the neck. Louis dropped his eyes. There was a rush in the air, the corporal's fist ramming into Louis's head. Louis staggered. "Why you no look in my eye?" the corporal hissed. The prisoners went rigid. Louis raised his eyes to the corporal's face. Again came the whirling arm, the blow to the skull, the stumbling legs. "You no look at me." This man, thought Tinker, is a psychopath. The corporal marched the men to a quarantine area, ordered them to stand there, and left. The men stood, growing colder. Hours passed. The corporal didn't return. The men sat down, shivering. Louis saw a discarded apple box nearby. Remembering his Boy Scout training, he pried at a slat from it, fit a stick into a hole into the slat, wound a bootlace around the stick, and began alternately pulling the ends, turning the stick until it began to smoke. He picked up a bit of straw mat and laid them on the smoking area. The mat whooshed into flames. The men gathered to warm themselves. The corporal suddenly reappeared, demanding to know how they got in matches. Louis explained how he'd built the fire. The corporal's face clouded over. Without warning, he slugged Louis in the head again. He barked at Louis to put the fire out, then walked away. The corporal's name was Muchishori Watanabe. Louis had met the man who would dedicate himself to shattering him. Watanabe had begun life with everything. Born into fabulously wealthy family, he grew up in luxury's lap, living in beautiful homes, waited on by servants. He attended Tokyo's prestigious Waseda University, studying French literature. In 1942, he graduated, then enlisted in the army. With prominent military officers in his family, Watanabe had lofty expectations for himself as a soldier. But when he applied to become an officer, he was rejected. He'd be a lowly corporal. His family derailed him, leaving him feeling disgraced, infuriated, and bitterly jealous of officers. He was exiled to the military's lowest station, POW camp, assigned to Amori and named disciplinarian of prisoners. He arrived seething with resentment. He became a monster. He beat POWs every day, fracturing their windpipes, rupturing their eardrums, shattering their teeth, tearing one man's ear half off, tying another to a tree for days. In the ecstasy of an assault, he wailed, drooling and frothing, sometimes sobbing. In the words of one POW, he was the most vicious guard in any prison camp on the main island of Japan. Both Watanabe's victims and his fellow Japanese would wonder at the source of his behavior. To some, it was madness. Others saw something calculating. When Watanabe beat men, POW officers looked at him with terror. Brutality gave him power that his rank did not. He suddenly saw, after he hit a few men, that he was feared and respected for that, said British POW Tom Wade. And so that became his style of behavior. Two things separated Watanabe from other war criminals. One was his love of emotional torture. He forced men to stand for hours bowing at pumpkins. He ordered a chaplain to stand all night saluting a flagpole, shouting the Japanese word for salute, "Keri," leaving the man weeping and out of his mind. He destroyed POWs' family photographs and burned unopened letters from home in front of them. He ordered men to violate camp policies, then attacked them for breaking the rules. He was, said one POW, absolutely the most sadistic man I ever met. The other attribute unique to Watanabe was his inconsistency. He spun from serenity to rage in an instant. One POW recalled seeing him gently praise a POW, fly into a fury and beat him unconscious, then quietly eat his lunch. After beatings, he sometimes apologized in tears. His regret usually lasted only moments. When Watanabe wasn't thrashing POWs, he was forcing them to be his buddies, inviting them to his room for tea parties. He expected men to respond as if they adored him. Maybe he held these gatherings because they left POWs feeling more stressed than if he were consistently hostile. Or maybe he was just lonely. Among the Japanese, Watanabe was despised for his haughtiness and boasts about his wealth and education. He had no friends. One POW compared the tea parties to sitting on edge of a volcano. Any misstep, any misunderstood word might set Watanabe off, leaving him smashing china, flipping tables, and pounding his guests. Even when the gatherings were peaceful, Watanabe seemed to feel humiliated by having had to force friendship from POWs. The next day, he'd often attack the previous night's buddies. He favored a particular type of victim. Enlisted men usually received only the occasional slapped face. But thanks to Watanabe's intense jealousy of officers, high-ranking POWs were in for an unrelenting cruelty. A few officers were especially provocative. Some had elevated status, such as physicians, chaplains, and those who'd been prominent in civilian life. Others he resented because they wouldn't crawl before him. These he hunted with inexhaustible hatred. From the moment Watanabe locked eyes with Louis Zamperini, an officer, a famous Olympian, an inherently defiant man, no one obsessed him more. And that's the end of chapter 23.